There was a time when my life was loud. Not the kind of loud you complain about, but the kind that tells you you're needed. Dishes clinking in the sink before sunrise, shoes thudding against the wall by the door, someone always calling "Mom" from another room, sometimes two voices at once, competing for my attention like it was the most natural thing in the world. Back then, silence only came after everyone was asleep. I didn't know how valuable that noise was until it disappeared. What I didn't know either was that silence wouldn't be the worst thing my children would ever do to me. My name is Helen Monroe. I'm a mother, and for a long time I believed my children drifting away was just part of life, that growing up meant growing distant, that if you loved them enough early on, they'd remember you later. That's what I told myself. I live alone now in a small apartment that feels larger than it should, not because it's spacious, but because there's no one else in it. The rooms echo when I walk. The air feels still, like it's waiting for something that never arrives. Every morning I wake up before the sun, not because I have somewhere to be, but because my body never learned how to rest once no one depended on me anymore. I lie there sometimes, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the building waking up, other people's lives beginning, doors opening, voices drifting through walls. Somewhere, someone is calling their mother. The walls of my apartment are still covered in photographs, not because they bring me comfort, but because taking them down would mean admitting something I avoided for years. There's Rachel, maybe 6 years old, holding a ribbon she won at school, smiling like she'd just conquered the world. And Mark, in a baseball uniform that was always too big, standing beside his father with that crooked grin I used to kiss before bedtime. Those photos come from a time when I believed effort was enough. After my husband died, it was just the three of us. No safety net, no backup plan, just responsibility and love tangled so tightly I couldn't tell them apart. I worked long shifts, picked up extra hours, skipped meals without noticing. I told myself it didn't matter, as long as my children never felt the lack. I thought love worked like that. You give, you sacrifice, and someday it comes around. The distance didn't happen all at once. That's what makes it dangerous. At first, phone calls got shorter. Conversations rushed. "I've got to go" replaced "tell me more." Visits turned into "next time." Holidays came with explanations that sounded reasonable enough to accept. Busy lives, work, kids, responsibilities. Eventually, even the explanations stopped. I didn't chase them. I was careful not to. I learned how to reach out without sounding desperate, how to leave voicemails that didn't carry disappointment in them, how to say, "just checking in," without letting my voice crack. I sent gifts next, always thoughtful, always wrapped carefully. Birthdays, Christmas, small things that said, "I still know you, I still care." I took photos of each package before mailing them, not to show anyone, but to remind myself I hadn't given up. I never heard back. Not a thank you, not a call, not even a complaint. Years passed that way. I learned I was a grandmother by accident, a stranger's conversation at a cafe, a name I recognized spoken casually by someone who didn't know it mattered. I smiled politely, nodded, then went to the bathroom and cried quietly into a paper towel like a teenager who didn't want to be seen. I told myself it was fine. I told myself children grow away from their parents. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Still, I never imagined how wrong I was. I thought being forgotten was the worst thing that could happen, until an invitation proved I hadn't been forgotten at all. The envelope didn't look like a bill. That's how I noticed it. Thick paper, clean edges, my name typed neatly on the front. Formal, precise, careful. It sat in my mailbox like it didn't belong there, like it had wandered into the wrong life. I stood in the hallway longer than I should have, keys still in my hand, staring at it, afraid that opening it would either break me or give me hope I couldn't afford. Inside was an invitation, elegant, minimal, the kind of thing people send when they want an event to look important. My daughter's name printed at the top, Rachel Monroe, an invitation to her birthday celebration. No note, no message, no explanation, just a date, an address, and a request for formal attire. After 20 years of silence, I was suddenly being invited back in. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table and stared at the paper like it might change if I waited long enough. My hands were shaking, not from excitement, but from something heavier. Confusion mixed with longing is a dangerous thing. I wanted to believe it meant something, that maybe this was her way of reaching out, that maybe she didn't know how to apologize, that maybe this was a first step. But a quiet voice inside me whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. Sometimes people don't come back because they miss you. Sometimes they come back because they need something. I hadn't bought a new dress in years. There was never a reason. No dinners, no celebrations, no one waiting for me to see me. Still, the idea of showing up looking careless felt wrong. If this was my chance to exist again in my children's lives, I wasn't going to arrive as an afterthought. I took the bus downtown and walked into a department store that felt brighter and louder than I remembered. Music played overhead, mirrors everywhere, young sales clerks moving quickly, talking faster. I stood there for a moment, feeling invisible. Then I reminded myself, I had earned the right to take up space. I chose a simple navy blue dress, nothing flashy, nothing that begged for attention, something respectful, something a mother could wear without embarrassing her daughter. The price made me hesitate. Then I paid anyway. On the way home, I stopped at a small gift shop. That part hurt more than I expected. I stood there too long, picking things up, putting them back down. I didn't know what kind of woman Rachel had become. I finally chose a silver picture frame, simple, classic, something that could hold a family photo if I was lucky enough to be part of one again. The card took the longest. Everything I wrote sounded wrong, too emotional, too distant, too hopeful. I tore up 4 versions before settling on 3 simple words. Happy birthday, Rachel. The night before the party, I barely slept. Not from excitement, from dread. I thought I was walking into a celebration, but I was actually walking into a setup. The house was larger than I imagined. Tall gates, perfect landscaping, lights strung carefully across the backyard like something out of a magazine. Music drifted through the air, mixed with laughter and the clink of glasses. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a display. A woman I didn't recognize opened the door and smiled politely, pointing me toward the backyard, as if I were just another guest who belonged there. The party was already full. People stood in clusters, laughing easily, hugging, calling each other by name. Families moved together naturally, children weaving between adults who knew exactly who they were. I stood near the edge. Then I saw Rachel. She stood near the center of it all, confident, glowing, completely at ease. She looked like someone whose life had worked out exactly the way she planned. When she saw me, her smile paused, just for a second. "Mom," she said, kissing the air near my cheek, "you came." I handed her the gift. She didn't look at it. "You can put your purse over there," she said, already turning away. Just like that, the moment passed. I found an empty chair near the edge of the yard and sat down, folding my hands in my lap like I used to at school assemblies when I didn't know anyone. That's when I saw my son. Mark stood near the bar, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. He looked confident, successful. Our eyes met. For a second, I thought he might come over. Then he turned away. That hurt more than I expected. And in that moment, something settled in my chest. This didn't feel like reconciliation. It felt like I had wandered into a room where everyone else had been rehearsing without me. I just didn't know why yet. I didn't know why I'd been invited, but I was about to find out in front of everyone. I stayed in that chair longer than I should have. From the edge of the yard, I watched the party move around me like I was part of the background, the core, not guest. People laughed freely. They leaned close to one another, shared stories that assumed everyone listening already belonged. I tried to tell myself this was normal, that time had passed, that distance made things awkward, that I was simply out of practice being around people who no longer needed me. But my chest stayed tight, and something in my gut kept whispering the same thing over and over. You don't belong here. Rachel came back toward me eventually, this time with a man walking beside her. Tall, clean-cut, confident in the way people are when life has gone their way. "Mom," she said brightly, "this is Derek, my husband." Husband. The word landed heavier than it should have. He shook my hand firmly. "Nice to finally meet you." Finally. Rachel didn't look at me when she said, "We're about to say a few words. Just stay nearby, okay?" Stay nearby. Those two words stirred something fragile inside me. Hope, maybe, or habit. A few minutes later, the music softened, conversations faded, people drifted closer, drinks in hand. Rachel stood beside Derek. Mark joined them. They looked polished, united, like a family that knew exactly how it appeared from the outside. Derek smiled and began talking. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about how special the night was, about how proud he was of his wife. Then he said it. Family means everything to us. My stomach tightened. Mark stepped forward next. "We've been working on something important," he said, "something that represents our future." Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "A place where we can all come together, build memories." Her eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on me. "Mom," she said, her voice carrying just enough, "why don't you come stand with us?" Every head turned. Heat rushed to my face. For a moment I considered pretending I hadn't heard her, but the pause stretched, uncomfortable and public. So I stood. Each step toward them felt heavier than the last. When I reached them, Rachel slipped an arm around me. From the outside, it probably looked loving. From the inside, it felt staged. Mark was holding a folder. That's when my heart started pounding. "We're investing in a beach house," he said, "a shared family property." Soft applause rippled through the crowd. Rachel smiled. "That way it belongs to all of us." Then she leaned closer to me. "You still have the money from selling the old house, right?" The house my husband died in. The last place we were a family. Mark opened the folder. "We've already prepared the paperwork." The crowd smiled, unaware. That's when it finally became clear. I wasn't invited because I was missed. I was invited because they thought I wouldn't say no in public. They expected gratitude, but what they got instead was hesitation. The folder stayed open between us. No one rushed me. They didn't need to. That was the strategy. Silence, eyes, expectation. 50 well-dressed strangers watching what they thought was a touching family moment. Rachel leaned in closer. "It's really not complicated," she said softly. "We just need to move fast on this." Move fast. For 20 years, there had been no urgency when it came to me. No rush to call, no pressure to visit, no concern when months turned into years. But now everything was urgent. Mark pointed to a page. "You'd be contributing $200,000, he said casually. "You'd get a share, of course." A share. Derek smiled at me. "Think of it as securing your place with us," he said. "Somewhere you'll always be welcome." Welcome, after years of silence. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. "You've always been good at sacrificing for us," she whispered. "This is just one more thing." That sentence did it. Not the money, not the crowd, that assumption. I took a slow breath. "I need time," I said. The words landed wrong immediately. Rachel's smile tightened. "Time?" she asked. "There isn't much," Mark added. "I said I need time," I repeated, louder now. People shifted. Someone cleared their throat. Rachel's fingers pressed into my shoulder. "Don't embarrass us," she whispered, still smiling. Embarrass, as if I were the problem. "I'm not signing anything tonight," I said. The backyard went quiet. They thought pressure would break me, but pressure had already taught me something else. I turned to leave. They followed me toward the gate, footsteps quick and sharp against stone. "You had no right to do that," Rachel hissed, grabbing my arm. I looked down at her hand and gently removed it. "You stopped having the right to touch me when you stopped treating me like a mother," I said. Mark stepped in. "You're being emotional." "No," I replied. "I'm being honest." "That wasn't the place," Rachel snapped. "You chose the place," I said. Someone nearby slowed, pretending not to listen. "I called you," I continued, my voice steady. "For years. I sent gifts. I waited." Rachel shook her head. "We were busy." "Busy enough to forget I existed," I said, "but not too busy to remember my money." A woman nearby whispered, "Is that true?" Rachel froze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I wasn't invited because I was loved," I said clearly. "I was invited because I was useful." Silence, the kind that exposes everything. Derek stepped forward, trying to smooth it over. "Let's take this inside." "No," I said. "I think this is exactly where it belongs." Mark's jaw tightened. "You're overthinking this." I met his eyes. "You already decided my answer." And that was the moment the control slipped. Walking away didn't end it. It made them panic. I didn't go straight home. I asked the driver to keep going, past my building, past familiar streets, past places that still carried pieces of a life I had been trying to hold together out of habit instead of hope. I stared out the window as the city blurred by, my reflection faint in the glass. I looked older than I felt, or maybe I felt older than I ever had. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from release. For years, I had imagined confrontation as something loud, something explosive. I thought closure would come with raised voices or tears or finally being seen. But what I felt instead was clarity, clean, sharp, unavoidable. They didn't forget me. They didn't drift away by accident. They erased me deliberately and only remembered me when my absence became inconvenient. That truth hurt, but it also freed me. When I finally told the driver my address, my voice didn't crack. When I unlocked my apartment door, I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside and closed it gently behind me, like I was sealing off an old chapter instead of slamming it shut. The silence inside didn't feel cruel anymore. It felt honest. I set my purse down and took out the gift I never gave Rachel. The silver picture frame caught the light. I stared at it for a long moment, then placed it face down in a drawer and closed it. Some things don't deserve to be displayed. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the small kitchen table, staring at nothing. That's when the thoughts stopped being emotional and started being practical. If they were willing to ambush me in public, if they had already prepared paperwork, if they believed they were entitled to what I had left like it already belonged to them, then this wasn't over. They would call, they would pressure, they would rewrite the story until I became the problem. And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. They didn't see me as a person, they saw me as an asset. That was the moment I stopped waiting. I pulled out a notebook and began to write. Not memories, not feelings, a plan. First, my money. Every account they knew about would be closed, moved, protected. I would not give them another opportunity to count what I had left like it already belonged to them. Second, access. No more shared contacts, no more open doors disguised as kindness. Third, control. I would stop explaining myself to people who only listened when they wanted something. I didn't sleep that night, but I wasn't exhausted. I was focused. By morning, I wasn't running. I was preparing. The calls started early. I let the phone ring. Then the voicemails. Short at first, casual, as if nothing had happened. "Mom, it's Mark. Call me." No apology. No concern. Just expectation. I deleted it. Emails followed. "We should talk. This got out of hand. Let's clear the air." I didn't respond. That's when the tone shifted. Rachel's message came next, carefully written, soft around the edges. "We're worried about you. Please let us know you're okay." Worried. That word almost made me laugh. You don't ignore someone for 20 years and then panic when they stop answering. That's not concern. That's fear of losing control. I closed the email and blocked the address. A few days later, my neighbor called. "Helen," she said hesitantly, "your kids came by. They were asking questions." That was new. They hadn't come looking for me when I was sick, not when my husband died, not when holidays passed without a call. But now? Now that I was unreachable? I thanked her and told her the truth, that I had moved and didn't want contact. She paused, then said quietly, "Good for you." That mattered more than she knew. The next contact came through a lawyer. A polite letter, carefully worded, full of phrases like family responsibility and unfinished matters. I handed it to my attorney. She read it once and smiled without humor. "They're fishing," she said. "They don't have leverage, but they think pressure will work." "Will it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Only if you let it." We responded once. Brief. Professional. "My client is safe. She does not wish to be contacted. Further attempts will be considered harassment." That should have ended it. It didn't. Mark called from a new number. This time I answered. Not because I missed him, because I wanted him to hear my voice one last time. "You can't just disappear like this," he said. "I can," and I did. "You embarrassed us," he snapped. "I stopped participating," I said. There was a pause. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. When private pressure failed, they tried something louder. The envelope arrived by certified mail. That alone told me everything. People don't send certified letters when they care about your feelings. They send them when they want proof you received the threat. Inside was a legal notice, cold, controlled, accusing me of abandoning family responsibilities and causing emotional harm by disappearing without notice. I felt insulted, not afraid. My attorney didn't even blink. "They don't have a case," she said, "but they do have a strategy." "What kind?" I asked. "Public pressure." She was right. A week later, vague posts started appearing online. Nothing direct, nothing provable, just carefully crafted sadness. How hard it is when parents walk away, how painful it is to be abandoned. Comments poured in with sympathy. People who didn't know me filled in the blanks for them. That's when my attorney asked me a question that changed everything. "Do you want to stay silent," she said, "or do you want to tell the truth?" I thought about the years I had swallowed pain to keep the peace. Silence had protected them. It never protected me. "I want the truth out," I said. She nodded. "Then we do it right." We didn't post rants. We shared facts. Call logs, receipts, dates I wasn't invited, years that spoke for themselves. The article went live on a Friday morning. By noon, the story had turned, and for the first time in decades, they weren't controlling the narrative. Once the truth was public, they realized they were losing something they could never get back. I didn't expect the article to travel the way it did. I thought it would circulate quietly, shared among people who already understood this kind of silence. I thought it would sting my children, maybe embarrass them, and then fade like everything else in my life had. I was wrong. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Not with chaos, with recognition. Messages came from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old coworkers, distant relatives, women my age who wrote as if they'd been holding their breath for decades. This happened to me too. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I never could. I read every message slowly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Rachel called that afternoon. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail instead. Her voice was tight, strained in a way I didn't recognize. "How could you do this to us?" she said. "People are calling. My friends are asking questions I can't answer." I deleted it. Mark's message came next, shorter, colder. This could have been handled privately. Privately. That word again. Everything they'd done to me had been private, quiet, easy to deny. The moment it became public, it suddenly mattered. My attorney forwarded an email from their lawyer. The tone had changed completely. No accusations now, no threats, just cautious language about resolving things discreetly. They wanted the story to stop. I didn't respond. Then came the interview request. A local news station. They wanted to give context, perspective. They promised calm questions, no spectacle. I thought about it all night. Part of me wanted to disappear again, to protect the peace I'd finally found. But another part of me, the part that had waited by silent phones for too many years, knew this moment wasn't just about me anymore. So I said yes. The studio was quiet, neutral, no dramatic lighting, just a chair, a microphone, and a woman across from me who actually listened. She asked one question. When did you realize your children didn't want a relationship, only control? I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I told the truth about unanswered calls, about learning I was a grandmother from strangers, about standing under string lights while paperwork was placed in my hands. I wasn't angry that night. I was clear, and clarity is scarier than anger. The clip aired that evening. By morning, the narrative had collapsed. They finally heard me, but not in the way they wanted. Rachel showed up at my door 2 days later. I hadn't given her my address. Someone must have. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup, no confidence, just anger wrapped tightly around panic. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "We're talking now," I replied. "You humiliated us," she said. "You turned everyone against us." "No," I said calmly. "I stopped protecting you." Mark stood behind her, jaw clenched. "Do you know what this has cost us?" I nodded. "Yes, and I know what it cost me to stay silent." Rachel's voice cracked. "You could have just given us the money." That sentence did it. Not the interviews, not the headlines. That sentence. I looked at my children, the adults they'd become, and felt something settle permanently in my chest. "This was never about reconciliation," I said. "It was about access." Neither of them denied it. "I'm not taking the story back," I continued, "and I'm not coming back under conditions." Mark scoffed. "So that's it? You just walk away?" "I already did," I said. I went back inside and locked the door. For the first time, I didn't wonder if they'd call again. I didn't care. What I did next made it permanent. I finalized everything the next week. My will, my accounts, my medical directives. Rachel and Mark's names were removed, not out of anger, but honesty. I left what I had to organizations that supported elderly women who'd been cut off by family, women who sat in silence, believing neglect was normal, women who blamed themselves for being forgotten. It felt right. Then I did one last thing. I wrote a letter. Not to my children, to myself. I wrote about the years I waited, the nights I wondered what I'd done wrong, the holidays I spent alone, telling myself they were just busy. And then I wrote the truth, that I loved deeply, that I showed up, that their absence was not my failure. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer beside my bed. That was the last thing tying me to the version of myself who waited. The lawsuit was dropped quietly soon after. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And this time, it didn't hurt. On a calm afternoon, I walked along the shoreline near my home. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, unconcerned with family drama or public opinion. I realized then that peace doesn't come from being understood by the people who hurt you. It comes from no longer needing them to. I used to believe a mother's role was to endure. Now I know better. A mother's role is to live. And I finally am. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Do you believe parents owe their children everything, even after years of silence? Or do you believe love without respect eventually becomes self-erasure? If you were in my place, would you have stayed quiet? Would you have signed the papers? Or would you have walked away the moment love became conditional? Tell me in the comments. Should parents be allowed to choose peace over obligation? If this story made you uncomfortable, good, because silence is comfortable for the people who benefit from it. If you've lived this, comment, "I understand." If someone you know needs this, share it. And remember, sometimes the strongest boundary isn't anger, it's clarity.